Serena Hawley arrived at Fort Brimstone on a foggy morning when the parade ground was filled with shouting drill instructors and rushing recruits. Yet nobody noticed her stepping out of the transport truck with a simple backpack and a thin file pressed against her chest. She didn't carry weapons, didn't wear medals, didn't have the posture of a fighter, so the soldiers automatically assumed she was just another clerical worker assigned to some dusty office. Her quiet footsteps disappeared beneath the noise of boots slamming on concrete, and she blended into the background like she didn't exist. When she introduced herself to the front desk sergeant, he barely lifted his eyes, stamped her paper, and handed her a visitor badge instead of a personnel badge. She didn't correct him. She just nodded politely and walked away as if none of it bothered her. Inside the mess hall, the atmosphere grew sharp as young Marines whispered and laughed. One nudged another and pointed at her plain uniform. "Admin girl," they said. "Probably here because her uncle knows someone." Serena simply took a tray, sat in the far corner, and ate her breakfast in silence. She didn't react when a few soldiers passed by and joked loudly about how long she'd last at a base like this. Her eyes didn't rise, her shoulders didn't tense. She just kept eating slowly, almost calmly, as if she had expected every insult before it came. But something unusual happened when she checked in at the main hall. As she scanned her ID card, the small device gave a faint triple-tone beep, a sound so quick and soft that no one else paid attention. Serena paused for half a second, then walked on. Her calm face didn't reveal anything, but inside that moment, something critical had triggered, a system recognizing a clearance level the staff had never seen. Throughout the day, she observed everything with subtle precision. The rotation of guards, timing of patrols, blind spots in security cameras, and the tension between certain officers. No one realized she was studying the base more accurately than most intelligence teams. To everyone around her, she remained invisible. Ignored, underestimated, a harmless girl with soft steps and quiet manners. But beneath her calm expression and silent presence, a truth was waiting. A truth the entire base would soon be forced to face when the right person spoke the right code. Until then, Serena simply walked through the halls like a ghost no one respected. Yet no one understood how dangerous that mistake truly was. The next morning began with the sharp blare of the base alarm. A sudden drill meant to test reaction speed. Soldiers rushed out of their quarters, boots slamming, radios crackling, officers shouting rapid commands through the hallways. In the chaos, Serena Hawley moved differently, quiet, controlled, almost eerily synchronized with every step happening around her. While everyone scrambled to figure out the new checkpoint routes, she walked straight toward them like she already knew the layout had changed. Her movements were too precise for someone who supposedly worked in administration. She paused before turning each corner, not out of fear, but because she seemed to anticipate who would appear there before they arrived. A sergeant noticed her pace and muttered under his breath, "How is she moving like she rehearsed the drill?" But he didn't get an answer. Serena simply continued forward, scanning rooms with a calm gaze that unsettled anyone who met her eyes. When she reached the operations desk, she submitted her completed inventory report 20 minutes before the drill officially began. The officer receiving the files frowned at the timestamp and checked twice, confused by how she finished work before being told to start it. Serena only offered a polite nod and stepped back without explaining anything. As the drill intensified, she navigated restricted hallways that most lower-ranking staff couldn't even access. Doors that required double authentication flickered once and opened for her without resistance. The technicians monitoring the base systems stared at the logs in disbelief. Who authorized her clearance? One of them whispered, "No one at her level should be able to walk through those gates." A suspicious captain finally confronted her, blocking her path with crossed arms and a glare sharp enough to intimidate most soldiers. He demanded to know who signed her codes, what division she belonged to, and why every security check kept approving her movements. Serena looked at him with quiet patience, then calmly recited his service file, his last deployment date, the exact number of missions he failed to report, and the private reprimand he received last winter. Every detail was word for word accurate. The captain froze, his face draining as the reality hit him. She knew things she should never know. From that moment, whispers spread like wildfire. Soldiers pretended not to stare, but couldn't ignore the way she glided through areas far beyond her rank. Something was wrong, something was hidden. Something much larger than an admin girl moving paperwork. And the base began to feel it, a tension settling in the air. A warning of a storm approaching, a sense that Serena Hale was not who they thought she was, but someone far more dangerous, far more trained, and far more deeply connected to secrets no one wanted to uncover yet. The uneasy tension around Fort Brimstone thickened over the next 24 hours. Soldiers whispered more than they trained. Officers double-checked security logs. And the captain who confronted Serena avoided even looking in her direction. Everyone felt something was coming. And that fear finally took shape when the distant roar of helicopter blades cut through the afternoon sky. The sound wasn't normal transport noise, it was deeper, heavier, carrying the presence of someone whose arrival could freeze the entire base in place. The chopper descended at the center landing zone, and the moment its skids touched the concrete, the atmosphere shifted as if the air itself stood at attention. General Rourke stepped out broad-shouldered, stone-faced, a legend spoken of in hushed tones by men who had survived 4 wars. Even colonels stiffened when they heard his name. He didn't glance at the welcoming officers rushing toward him, didn't acknowledge the salute offered by a trembling lieutenant. Instead, he walked straight past them with measured steps, scanning the base with an expression that could cut metal. Something about his eyes said he wasn't here for inspection or ceremony. He was here for a reason none of them were prepared to face. He stopped in the main courtyard, and every soldier around him fell silent as he spoke his first words. "Where is Sergeant Major Hull?" A wave of confusion spread instantly. The base had no Sergeant Major Hawley. They had checked the roster 100 times. Officers exchanged nervous looks, junior soldiers whispered, and the captain's heart hammered in his chest. Suddenly the crowd parted on its own, as if pushed by an unseen force. Because Serena Hawley stepped forward. She didn't speak, didn't salute, didn't explain herself. She simply stood before the general with calm eyes. And what happened next struck everyone like a shockwave. General Rourke raised his hand and saluted her. A full, crisp, perfectly delivered salute offered by a man who outranked nearly everyone on the continent. The courtyard froze. Someone dropped a clipboard. Someone else whispered, "What is she?" The general leaned close to Serena, his voice low enough that only she heard the words, but the base heard the reaction. He whispered a single code, Protocol Black Sigma, and Serena's eyes didn't widen. Her breath didn't change, she simply nodded once. But the soldiers? They felt every drop of blood leave their faces. Because Black Sigma wasn't a code for emergencies. It was a code for operatives so dangerous, so classified, so untouchable, that even generals avoided speaking about them. And now the entire base realized the truth. The girl they ignored was something far beyond ordinary. And the real nightmare was only just beginning. The moment the general whispered Protocol Black Sigma, the base security grid erupted into motion. Sirens wailed through every hallway. Metal shutters slammed down over armories. Red lights flashed across the command center. And soldiers sprinted in every direction, trying to understand what kind of threat demanded the highest emergency code in the country. Officers barked orders without knowing who the enemy even was. Some assumed it was a foreign attack. Others thought a spy had infiltrated the base. But none of them were prepared for the truth, that the danger had been operating beneath their noses for months. And Serena had been tracking it silently from the moment she arrived. General Rourke walked beside her with grim focus while everyone else kept a safe distance. Serena's demeanor changed entirely. The quiet, invisible admin girl vanished, replaced by someone whose voice carried the weight of absolute command. She began issuing rapid instructions before any officer could speak, pointing out which sectors needed to lock down, identifying compromised corridors, and exposing blind spots in surveillance that no one had ever noticed. The technicians monitoring the security feeds felt their stomachs twist when Serena revealed that several cameras had been looping for weeks, meaning someone inside the base had been sabotaging their systems from within. Armed squads formed instantly, but they were confused when Serena took the lead position, moving with a precision that made elite soldiers look untrained. She guided them through the lower levels where hidden signals had been traced. Her steps were silent yet certain, every turn chosen with the accuracy of someone who had memorized the base long before she ever stepped inside it. When the first traitor was discovered, a communications officer secretly transmitting encrypted files, Serena didn't hesitate. She disarmed him so quickly the soldiers behind her barely saw the movement. The shock on their faces deepened when she accessed his encrypted drive in seconds, revealing months of leaked intel that no one else had detected. As the investigation spread, more rogue operatives were uncovered, people the base trusted, people who had worn the same uniform, people who blended in perfectly until Serena tore away the disguise. Officers who mocked her earlier couldn't even hold her gaze now. They watched as she moved through operations rooms like a ghost carved from discipline and danger. Her voice steady, her calculations flawless, her presence radiating a force that made hardened soldiers straighten their posture without realizing it. By the time the lockdown reached full intensity, one truth echoed through every hallway. Serena Hawley wasn't just an asset. She was a weapon built for situations no ordinary soldier could survive. And the base finally understood how foolish they had been to ignore her. The final breach began with a thunderous crack that echoed through the underground levels. A shockwave strong enough to shake dust from the ceiling and send soldiers stumbling backward. Serena Hawley didn't flinch, not even for a heartbeat. Her eyes narrowed as the reinforced door to the data vault trembled under repeated explosive charges. Behind that door was everything the rogue unit had been trying to steal: intel that could cripple entire divisions, codes that could redirect military satellites, identities of operatives working across the world. Serena stepped in front of her squad without hesitation. Lifting her hand to signal them to stay back, they obeyed instantly, as if she carried a gravity that anchored everyone around her. The next blast cracked the vault open, and masked operatives rushed through the smoke. Weapons raised, voices shouting in distorted aggression. The soldiers behind Serena aimed their rifles but hesitated. Unsure where to shoot in the chaos, Serena didn't need to hesitate. She moved, not like a person reacting, but like someone who had already lived this moment before it happened. Her body flowed with perfect timing, dodging bullets by inches, striking pressure points with lethal precision, turning attackers' momentum against them. Every movement was silent, efficient, almost unnervingly graceful. The soldiers watching felt a chill ripple through their bones, because what they were witnessing didn't look like combat. It looked like inevitability within seconds. Half the rogue team lay incapacitated, the others attempting to flee through the maintenance tunnels. Serena activated a hidden command panel on the wall, her voice steady as she spoke a sequence of codes no one in the room recognized. The entire base responded instantly. Cameras rotated, blast doors slammed shut. Targeting drones aligned with mechanical precision. Every piece of technology seemed tied to her heartbeat. Soldiers stared as the base practically bent itself around Serena's will, sealing the traitors inside corridors they could no longer escape. When the last operative surrendered, Serena didn't show triumph, only controlled calm. Because victory wasn't her goal, containment was. She retrieved a drive from the vault's core system, scanned it once, then handed it to General Rourke without a word. The general looked at her with a mix of respect and something almost like remorse, as if he felt pity for the weight she carried. He turned to the stunned officers gathered in the command center and spoke so the entire base could hear. "You all questioned her," he said. "You all doubted her, mocked her, ignored her." His gaze swept across them like a blade. "But Serena Holly is not an assistant. She is not a recruit. She is not here to file your paperwork." He paused before giving them the truth they weren't ready for. "She is Black Sigma class. The highest cleared operative in the country, ranked above colonels. Trusted with missions entire battalions cannot survive." Gasps rippled through the room. Soldiers stiffened. Officers dropped their eyes in shame. The girl they dismissed like a stranger now stood above them as someone they were expected to salute with trembling hands. Serena didn't bask in the recognition. She didn't smile, didn't scold, didn't remind them of their mockery. She simply collected her backpack, the same one she brought on her first day, and walked toward the exit while the entire base quietly moved aside, making a path for her as if she were royalty or something far more dangerous. Outside, the wind swept across the tarmac, lifting her hair as she paused by the waiting helicopter. For a moment she looked back at the base, not with anger or pride, but with the calm of someone who understood her purpose. She nodded once to General Rourke, a silent acknowledgement between two ghosts of a world ordinary people would never understand. As the helicopter lifted her into the sky, the soldiers below finally realized the deepest truth. They hadn't just ignored her. They had been blind to the very force that protected them. And the base would never look at a quiet girl the same way again.